Hey, it's time again for the Press Box Podcast. I'm Ralph Miranda. Joseph Miranda will be joining me. We've taken a couple weeks off. Hey, even us guys at the Press Box Podcast have to have a little bit of a break since we've been going nonstop since November with professional football playoffs, Super Bowl, college football playoffs, the start of golf, all those things. So we thought we would take a little bit of a break and catch our breath a little bit because we're getting into the honey hole of the sports season right now. We've got the first major in golf coming up in the Masters. We got the March Madness tournament starting today. We've got baseball starting in a couple weeks. So we want to make sure we were fresh and we were lining up some good guests for you as we take this thing further on down the road into the 2018 sports season. But today, we've got a lot of great things to talk about. We're going to talk about NFL free agency. The new league year started yesterday, March 14th at 4 p.m. Teams were able to negotiate with free agents on Monday, the 12th. So lots of signings, lots of movement around the league, and lots of question marks and scratching your head on some teams with regards to what they've done or not done in these first few days of free agency. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about golf. Tiger Woods is back. The guy finished second in the Valspar last week. He's tied, or he finished, he's seventh right now after the first round of the Arnold Palmer, but shot a 68 today for 4 under par. So we're going to talk about Tiger Woods, what he means to golf, what he means to businesses outside of golf, and how great it is to see him back in contention on the PGA Tour. And then we're going to wrap it up by talking a little bit about March Madness. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about that, as it's the event of the year during the last couple weeks of March. Talk about the number one seeds, who has the inroad to the championship, and a little bit about college basketball in general. So we've got that for you today on the Press Box Podcast. So stay with us, and we'll continue.
All right, and welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. As we said in the open, we're going to start by talking a little bit about some NFL free agency here. As what was the exact date of the new league year? Do you recall?
Yeah, well, I think I misspoke on a couple of podcasts previously. I thought the new league year started March 4th, but I eliminated one digit. It actually started officially yesterday, the 14th, at 4 p.m. Now, that was the beginning of the new league year, but Monday, the 12th, was when teams could start technically negotiating with free agents. They couldn't sign them until 4 o'clock yesterday, but they could start negotiating on Monday.
Okay, absolutely. So, the negotiations and signings now that we're past the 14th have come in quite a hurry here. So we'll go ahead and start with what seemed to be one of the top guys in the market, in Kirk Cousins. Specifically a top guy because he played the quarterback position, and a lot of franchise type of quarterbacks usually don't become available in free agency. So he signed a 3-year, $84 million fully guaranteed deal with the Vikings, which right. I think was a good signing for the Vikings, actually. We'll start there. And what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was a great signing for the Vikings, for a lot of reasons. I mean, let's look first at Kirk Cousins himself. I mean, here's a guy that was drafted in the 4th round in 2012, the same year that the Redskins traded all those number one picks to take Robert Griffin III with the second pick in the draft. So the first few years, he's not making any money. He's on the bench. He's basically holding the clipboard, whatever. Takes over the starting job for the Redskins about 3 years ago, has 2 tremendous seasons in the last 2. In fact, he's thrown for over 4,000 yards in each of the 3 seasons that he's been the starter. And the guy hit the free and the funny thing about all that is Washington would not commit to him. I mean, they had reservations about this guy as to whether he could be their franchise quarterback. I mean, here's a guy who threw for over 4,000 yards. All right, I think only 1 or 2 other quarterbacks have ever thrown for over 4,000 yards in 3 consecutive seasons, and yet they couldn't commit to him. So they put the franchise tag on him 2 times, okay?
Right.
And I think the first time he made like $21 million, and I think last year he made $24 million. So now the guy is a multi-millionaire. But but he hit the market at the right time. I mean, he had the leverage. There were a lot of tweets by current NFL players who obviously don't understand the concept of leverage and,
Right.
talking about, whoa, great deal for Kirk Cousins. Maybe this will open the floodgates to more fully guaranteed contracts. Well, no, it won't.
No.
Okay. I mean, Kirk Cousins had the leverage of being a 29-year-old starting quarterback who has delivered 3 outstanding seasons, and he hit the free agency market. I
Right.
mean, that's unheard of.
Right.
The last quarterback to do that was Peyton Manning, and we all saw what happened in that deal. So yeah, it was a great signing for the Vikings. I mean, they took a risk, the Vikings. I mean, they got rid of Case Keenum, a guy who was 11-3 for them as a starter last year, took them to the NFC Championship game. So the risk there is that if Kirk Cousins doesn't get them to the NFC Championship game, there's going to be lots of complaining by the fan base, and there's going to be lots of second guessing. But nonetheless, it was a good signing for them. It was a great signing for Kirk Cousins because now, over the last 3 years, he's made $125 million guaranteed.
Absolutely. And like you said about the guarantee, it's definitely not going to open the gates for more of that because this is, and you kind of lose this unique situation in that he's a quarterback that hit the free agent market, but specifically the position of quarterback, they don't take the beating play in and play out that other positions play, right? So that the risk of injury is much lower. So you're going to be getting the guy on the field most likely for what you paid for more often. And it was only a 3-year deal, so it's not like they committed, a 6, 7, 8-year deal fully guaranteed. So I think all those factors kind of make this a unique deal. But yeah, I like it for the Vikings as well because I think that, I think that they basically said, okay, I think Case Keenum kind of played above his head last year, and we don't really see that repeating itself. So let's go get somebody like Kirk Cousins, who we think is more of a sure thing. Which I think they were right about that. I think that had they kept Keenum, they didn't want to be in a situation where they were in week 7 or 8 next year and they were right around 500 or maybe a little below, and thought to themselves, oh, somebody like Kirk Cousins was out there, and we didn't get him. So good move by the Vikings, and I think that they'll definitely be at the top of that division. Probably right alongside the Packers if Rodgers is back healthy, and they'll most likely compete for the division as well.
Yeah, no, I think you make an excellent point. And the other thing which you alluded to in your comment, which I think is interesting, is it was a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a 7, 8, 9-year contract.
Right.
So that does a couple things. One, it gives the Vikings a little bit of leverage after 3 years. But think of Kirk Cousins. Think if he takes them to a Super Bowl in the next 3 years. I mean, when he's a free agent again, he could make $120 million guaranteed. So, I mean, this could be good for both teams, really. I mean, for both parties.
Right, absolutely. And then, we mentioned Case Keenum, the quarterback that was on the way out from Minnesota. And it didn't turn out all bad for him either. He got 2 years, $36 million from the Broncos. And the Broncos are a team that have lately kind of been doing this thing where they go out and get a veteran free agent quarterback. You mentioned with Manning, which is certainly Manning's much different, much better player than Keenum, and more of a sure thing to take them where they want to go. But interesting about the Broncos here, bringing in Keenum. They obviously, they didn't. It didn't seem to work out with the draft route because they drafted Trevor Siemian. He was a 7th round pick, and kind of opened some eyes up and had a few good starts here and there, but really wasn't the guy. And then they basically missed on their other 1st round pick, Paxton Lynch.
Right.
So yeah, they decided to go the free agent route here, and yeah, I think Keenum's he's fine, he's okay. He's kind of like similar to Alex Smith, where I think they could maybe reach 10 wins with him. I mean, I think that's possible. I'm not saying they will, but I don't think he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I just don't see that coming to fruition there.
No, I don't. And the Alex Smith thing makes me scratch my head a little bit too. Nothing against Alex Smith, but I don't see where the Redskins can justify Alex Smith over Kirk Cousins except for one factor. They probably got him cheaper than they would have got Kirk Cousins.
Right.
But outside of that, I don't think you gain a lot there. But I want to throw something out and get your opinion on it too. Is You mentioned you mentioned Kirk Cousins, a 3-year contract. You mentioned Case Keenum, a 2-year contract. Sam Bradford, one of the other Viking
Yeah.
quarterbacks, signed on with the Cardinals on a 1-year deal for $20 million. And Teddy Bridgewater, the third Viking quarterback, signed with the Jets on a 1-year deal as well. So it's interesting here because what you're seeing is, I was talking to our producer Nathan about this. In the past, over the last few years, you've seen what? You've seen teams draft quarterbacks in the first round and throw them into the fire. They give
Yeah.
them rookies have 4-year contracts, but they throw them into the fire. I think what you're starting to see is teams learning from that and also learning from the Browns' many failures over the years. And the Browns have done the same thing now. The Browns made a smart move. They signed Tyrod Taylor, or traded for Tyrod Taylor from the Bills, but they're probably going to go ahead and take a quarterback anyway. Now, here's the point. I think the Cardinals are in the market for a quarterback. I've heard that the Broncos, even though they've got a 2-year deal with Case Keenum, may take a quarterback at number 5 with their pick. So what you're seeing, I think, is teams saying, hey, maybe we ought to pull back from this, let's draft a quarterback and play him right away. Let's get a veteran for 2 or 3 years, and then let's draft a quarterback and let him learn. Because we've seen on many occasions where that is the best way to go about it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre, and you're seeing how that's starting to maybe, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe generate some different viewpoints in the NFL.
Yeah, I've always felt that way, and I don't know if we've talked about this before in the podcast, but you mentioned 2 examples there, and there's plenty more examples. I mean, even the guy like Carson Palmer, people forget he didn't play at all his first year, and and had a good career as a quarterback in the NFL. So I've always been in favor of high draft picks sitting under a veteran guy, unless it's. I mean, there's a few exceptions. Peyton Manning was ready from day one, I think, and somebody like Andrew Luck was also. But for the most part, when these guys are drafted high, they can benefit a lot from watching, and not only learning that team system and getting adjusted to the NFL schedule on a day to day. But I just feel like the more they stand there and watch, the game, they kind of feel like, okay, yeah, I can do this. They're not. They get more comfortable just being around the NFL game, whereas if you throw them in there week 1, and a lot of these teams that draft a quarterback high, the reason they're picking so high is they're not very good. And he goes in there and takes a beating and starts up on a bad foot, then he's starting his career off on a bad foot. So I'm definitely in favor of that, and I think the Browns should still take a quarterback, like you said. But Tyrod Taylor's he's a proven NFL starter. I don't know that he's not going to do anything special, and I don't think they're looking for him to do anything special. So yeah, I agree with that absolutely.
All right, let's talk about free agency on a level below the quarterbacks. I mean, some of these other goings on that have happened over the course of the last few days. I mean, the Dolphins have released Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah.
The Packers released Jordy Nelson, and he just recently signed, I think, today with the Raiders.
Right.
The Giants picked up Jonathan Stewart, who was released by the Panthers. The Giants signed Nate Solder, the left tackle from the Patriots, which supposedly was the best free agent tackle out there.
Yeah.
Interesting thing, one that I want to ask you about is the Raiders. I mean, what exactly are the Raiders doing? I mean, let's look at their situation. I mean, they signed Doug Martin. Okay.
Yeah.
Doug Martin is a running back that I think his best years are kind of behind him. I mean,
Yeah.
he really hasn't performed much in the last 2 years. He's 31 years old, I think, or somewhere around there. They signed Jordy Nelson, who's 33 years old, whose production has gone down over the last 2 years. It's had an injury. And they released Michael Crabtree, who's 31 years old. So, I mean, what do the Raiders do? I mean, do they really expect to get better, or are they trying to, turn the clock back to 1998?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's you have to ask John Gruden that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like he was just wanted some old Tampa Bay guys from signing Doug Martin. But of course, he didn't coach. He didn't coach him in Tampa Bay, but he still kind of connected with them down there. But I mean, I think if you just look at guy for guy, I think Jordy Nelson is probably an upgrade over Michael Crabtree. So you can say that's kind of a wash. They got rid of a receiver, they picked up a receiver. I guess they feel good about their defense. I mean, they still have Khalil Mack, and they still have a couple other good pieces there. I think with what you've seen, I guess they're viewing it as okay. In 2016, they had a good year, and I guess they just view last year as kind of just a little hiccup, and they're going to try to kind of run back the same type of team, without making any huge changes. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's not an easy division. I think you got to still look at the Chargers to make some noise, and the Broncos are kind of always in play. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to describe what they're doing. Besides, it's a little bit of head scratching, I guess.
Well, it's interesting though. I mean, you bring up a good point when you talk about the division because the Chiefs are going to have a rookie quarterback. All right. The Chargers, yeah, they look like a pretty good team, but let's face it. Phillip Rivers, he's getting a little bit long in the tooth as well, and I'm not sure that they have all the right pieces around him, especially in the defensive secondary.
Right.
And then you look at the Broncos. I mean, yeah, they got Case Keenum, but we just got finished talking about what kind of Case Keenum are you going to get? And their defense is getting a little old. So the Raiders really, I mean, the Raiders have the best quarterback in the division.
Yeah.
Young quarterback, and maybe they feel like they've got the edge, so they don't want to upset the apple cart too much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that, yeah, Derek Carr, he's like you said, I think he's the best quarterback in the division. I think he's somewhere. I don't know. I don't know if he's as good as people thought he was after 16, and I don't think he's as bad as he played last year. But I mean, he's a guy that can take him into the playoffs and maybe get something going there.
Yeah,
that's an interesting situation. What about some of these receivers that got signed here? Sammy Watkins signing with Kansas City on a 3-year deal. Allen Robinson to the Bears. Those are two of the, I guess, leaders of the free agent class there. Let's see. Let's see here. There's a few more. Well, Jimmy Graham, not a receiver, but for all purposes, is signed with Green Bay. Let's see.
Yeah, there's been a few others out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
we talked about Jordy Nelson just now, but yeah,
we did talk. Nelson, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some interesting points on some of those, and I'll touch on them. The Allen Robinson signing by
the Bears.
The Bears, I'm sorry, is interesting because of what it means to Jacksonville. I mean, they just re-signed Blake Bortles,
Yeah.
and they got rid of the receiver now, or let him walk, I guess.
Right.
But they paid a lot to get this offensive tackle from the Panthers. I believe his name was Newell, which tells me that they've basically anteed up and said, hey, we're going to continue to just bludgeon you to death.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to build our offensive line. We're going to run the football down your throat. And we don't care if Blake Bortles has any deep threats because he really did last year. It doesn't look like he's going to have any this year,
Right.
And then look at the Sammy Watkins thing, I think was kind of interesting, because if I'm not mistaken, he was with the Rams last year, correct?
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Okay, so he basically turned one good year. He was able to stay healthy last year and played in all 16 games. Stayed healthy, had a pretty good year, and turned that into a pretty productive contract, for himself in free agency. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting. But you really didn't see a lot of big name movement from the standpoint of, hey, that's a real shocker. Except. I mean, you really didn't see much of that.
I agree, and it seems like over the past few years, anyway, that a lot of the free agent receivers that hit the market have been kind of letdowns in their new spots. I mean, you go back to a few years where Mike Wallace had a lot of good years with the Steelers, and then I think he signed with the Dolphins, and he's bounced around a little since then, and not really to be heard from again.
Right.
Same with a guy like Pierre Garçon, and even Terrell Pryor had some good years in Cleveland and signed a deal with the Redskins last year and didn't really do much.
Right.
So it seems like the receivers that hit the market usually don't really like make a big splash in terms of how do I want to say it? I guess earning what they signed for seems to kind of always not live up to the hype in that way. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But the Jaguars, like you said, they paid over $60 million to the guard Norwell.
Right, Norwell.
Right, Norwell. Yeah, and then let's see here. I saw somebody else here. They signed another guard for 3 years, $15 million.
Right.
So I'm never in favor of committing that much money to offensive guards.
I know you're not.
Because I think you can kind of find those anywhere. But and I think that's widely accepted as kind of the least valuable position on the offensive line when you look at the tackles and centers. So I guess if they feel good about it, that's great. And they're built around trying to run the ball, so that's obviously will help there, and their defense is in place. So I think they'll be fine. Like they'll be competing with that division. We haven't really touched on the defensive side of the ball yet. The first thing I want to touch on is it wasn't a free agent signing, but a trade. We all know here on the Press Box podcast, you are a true Blue Giants fan. So they recently traded for Alec Ogletree from the Rams to get some help in that linebacking spot. What's your reaction to that trade? Because I know you felt like they needed some linebacking help for a while now.
Yeah, they've needed some linebacking help for many, many years, and I think the trade not only gives some linebacker help, but they had to make it because under their new defensive coordinator that came over from the Cardinals, they're going to probably switch to a 3-4 defensive look, and the Giants have been 4-3 for many years. So
Right.
they're going to need more linebackers, obviously, in that situation. But I think what Alec Ogletree does is they have B.J. Goodson, who they drafted out of Clemson a couple years ago, who was their middle linebacker last year, but he couldn't stay healthy. I mean, I think he played 1 or 2 games. But if he can stay healthy, he can be your run stopper, your thumper, and Ogletree's your speed guy. And I
Right.
think that them 2 guys in the middle in the 3-4 look that will make them a very strong football team there. And then they just need to get a couple more guys that they can put on the outside, however they want to play them in whatever scheme. Defensive linemen, I mean, going from 4 to 3, I think is going to help them quite a bit because they've already got some good ones in the stead and they can get a few more. But I think the Ogletree trade was a good trade. I think he's got a lot of years left in him. And I kind of scratched my head a little bit as to why the Rams traded him, to be honest with you.
Yeah. That's a good point as well. I mean, I've always liked him as a player, and I thought he was a good piece for the Rams there too. But yeah, I mean, I think the Rams, I guess my opinion is they're a little more of an offensive minded team. I think with their head coach being a former offensive coordinator and a young guy who's trying to groom a quarterback. So maybe they felt like they wanted to maybe trade some defensive assets that they felt like they could live without to get some picks and try to build up the offense a little more. I don't know what they were thinking, but it's definitely a good pickup for the Giants. Let's see here. Let's see what we got. Yeah, the biggest free agent defensive signing in terms of contract value is Malcolm Butler to the Titans.
Right.
He got a 5-year, $61 million deal, which I think will help him get over sitting out of the Super Bowl a little bit. So yeah, he goes to Tennessee there, and that division is kind of wide open going into this year. I know Jacksonville may be considered the favorite, but that'll certainly help them on the defensive end, I think.
Yeah, it will. I think they signed another corner too, or maybe traded for one. I don't remember his name right now. So they picked up 2 cornerbacks in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
They released DeMarco Murray,
Right.
which because they felt like they had a 2-headed monster, but I guess they feel like Derrick Henry can pick up the load himself, with some minor backup. And I think if anything, the Eagles taught us last year very well that you can have 3 pretty unheralded running backs and still do pretty well with them and win the Super Bowl. So. I don't think running back's all that important of a position when it comes to big names, but yeah, the Titans did really well there, and I think that'll be a good move for them as well as Malcolm Butler. And looking at the flip side of it, the Patriots have lost a lot of guys. I mean, they lost Malcolm, they lost Danny Amendola, who was one of Brady's most favorite targets, especially come playoff time. They lost Nate Solder, their offensive tackle, to the Giants. They've lost a couple other guys as well, but. If anything, the Patriots have taught us they can plug and play. They're going to find somebody to fill those spots up.
I saw one tweet on Twitter where it said that the best 3 things about this week for Patriots fans are that they still play in the same division as the Jets, the Dolphins, right, and the Bills. So that can't be overlooked because they've lost a lot of guys, but. That division is pretty weak right now. So I mean they're still in a good spot, obviously, but it never helps to lose those guys.
Well, how would you like to be a Jets fan though? I mean the Jets had, and I think I'm right about this, but they had like well over $90 million of cap space. I think the Browns had the most cap
Right,
space,
right,
114 million.
right.
But the Jets had close to $100 million in cap space, okay? And they couldn't close Kirk Cousins, which is maybe not their fault. I mean, he probably didn't want to go to New
Yeah,
York,
right.
so not their fault. But so far, I mean, so far they've come away with re-signing Josh McCown and signing Teddy Bridgewater. Now, to me, right now, their fans ought to be like in an uproar,
Yeah,
okay? Because you've basically not done anything in free agency. And
right.
now you've got the draft, you're sixth in the draft. So, if you want to get one of those quarterbacks, one of the top four quarterbacks, chances are, you may have to trade up
Yeah,
because
you will. Yeah,
the Browns are going to take one. More than likely, the Giants are going to take one. Uh, you know, the Broncos are probably going to take one. So, you may have to trade up if you really want the guy that you believe in.
yeah.
So I'm not Jets really, really understand free agency too well. All the money that they've got to spend.
Yeah, I mean, let's see here. I'm looking at this list. Their biggest free agent signing was linebacker Avery Williamson from Tennessee.
Right.
I mean, certainly not an impact type player there when you have that much money to spend. Yeah, but like you said too, I mean, maybe we don't know. Maybe they pursued some of these guys, and I mean, if you're a free
Could be.
agent, you have your choice of where to sign. So maybe they're not viewed as an attractive option amongst players around the league. But yeah, it doesn't look good from the outside as far as what the Jets had to work with and what they came away with so far.
Well, I'll also say this, though, in all fairness to what I just said, the flip side of it is I wrote an article on my blog yesterday regarding free agency. And I think, free agency sometimes can be fool's gold. And what I mean by that is, we've seen many, many occasions over the past few years of free agency signings of big name guys, okay, that have had great years with their previous teams and have been flops,
Yeah,
with their signing.
right,
So I say that to say that I think to the average fan, we look for big names, right? I mean, Kirk Cousins, Alec Ogletree, Ndamukong Suh, Nate Solder, whoever you want that big name to be. But really, the thing that we can't analyze as the fans that really makes your team is the signings of guys that you don't really know who they are, right?
right,
Because if those are the guys that you've done your due diligence on, and they're good, solid performers, and there's more than just performance to look at. There's, does he fill a need? Does he work well maybe with the scheme that you're running?
right,
Is he a good locker room guy? I mean,
right,
one of the Giants' problem last year is their locker room was horrible. They had guys quit on the team, guys refused to play, guys calling each other out. Well, you want to get some guys in that locker room that are going to be leaders, that are going to police the locker room themselves. So I say all that to say that, don't get too focused on whether it was a big name. Was it a guy, that maybe is going to, in the long run, going to be a better player for you than the guy that was too expensive and had the big press clippings?
Yeah, I think that's true. Another good point there is, NFL free agency. Those signings can be the least guaranteed with what you said because it involves a lot of factors. The scheme they play, does he fit with that? And also not the scheme, but take for example, the teammates around him. So you have, if you sign a linebacker who's a good linebacker, and maybe the scheme even fits him, but your defensive tackles are not or playing poorly or not up to par from at other teams. They take on more blockers. They can't play the same. Whereas if you look at a sport like baseball, the Yankees just got Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, he gets in the box, it's just still hitting. I mean, he has a different uniform on. So, and yeah, so I mean, football is unique in that way where it takes a lot of factors for free agents to really thrive in their new spots. So you have to be careful when
Right.
going after these guys and trying to really figure out if they're a fit.
Right. Excellent point.
All right, let's take a break real quick before we get back to the podcast to tell you about our sponsor, Bonus Room Art. You've heard us talk about this on the podcast before. That's because Bonus Room Art is a great company and great website. Head to bonusroomart.com today to see some great art prints of specifically movies and sports. Check out the newest multimedia tab on the website as well to get a behind-the-scenes look. And don't forget to follow Bonus Room Art on Instagram. Check them out there. If you use Instagram, it's a really good Instagram page for all things art and art appreciation as well. So again, Bonus Room Art, head there today. And now, back to the podcast.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about free agency, and I'm sure that in the coming weeks we'll talk a little more about it as more people get signed, and we start to see how some of this filters out in the off-season activities that are going to be starting here pretty soon. And I'm sure we're going to talk a lot of draft as we get closer to that as well, but that's a separate subject. But I want to switch to golf. We talked a little bit about golf a few weeks ago when the season was getting started. And Tiger Woods had a couple of good early showings, but Tiger is back. I mean, the excitement of golf is back again. And he had a good tournament at the Honda Classic. He had an excellent tournament last week at the Valspar. I mean, he was one putt away from a play to win that tournament. And now he comes out in the first round today at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, shoots a 68, even with a double bogey where he hit the ball out of bounds, and still shot a 68. And is, I think, 7th place right now, but only 4 shots off the lead.
Right.
So, golf is fun again. I mean, it's fun to watch golf again.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really exciting. I can't tell you how excited I am. I mean, if you look at just today, you mentioned the Honda. It's the Palmer today. He got out to that. -3, and then he made the double bogey, like you said.
Right.
And I was following along on the PGA Tour app, and I saw that double bogey, and I was like, oh, crap, here we go again. And I checked back like 20 minutes later, and he's at -4.
Right.
So I mean, just being able to turn it around like that and make up those shots back shows you that he's really got it going right now.
Oh, he does. I mean, the biggest part of it is he's healthy. I mean, that's the thing over the last 4 years with the previous 2 comebacks. That wasn't there. I mean, he tried to come back, but he wasn't healthy.
Right.
Okay. Now he's healthy. I mean, the guy is swinging it great. His club speed is great. His distances are awesome. His short game is impeccable. I mean, his short game is absolutely impeccable. His putter's solid. I mean, it's coming around, and that takes a little, but it's solid. Yeah. His iron game has always been the best in the game, and I think it's getting back to that point. The one factor, is that driver, and I think. The key about the Valspar last week and the Arnold Palmer this week is there's not too many holes, especially par 4s, where you absolutely have to hit driver. So he doesn't have to. But if he can just he's going to have to improve that driver just a little bit. Because when you go to Augusta, you're going to have to hit your driver at Augusta, and you're going to have to hit it right to get yourself in position to attack some of those hole positions. So that's the one thing that I hope that he can bring back. But if you listen to him talk, it's interesting because he's trying to temper expectations. Where in the past all you ever heard about Tiger was, I'm here to win. I'm here to win. Now it's, hey, look where I've come from. Look how far. So he's happy. I think he's excited about being back in tournament golf. And I think he's in a better place. Gosh, he's in a better place.
Yeah, and I think that he's tempering expectations publicly, but internally he's thinking, I'm going to win. All right, this is, I'm here to win. And he's just not, like you said, he's not saying that as much as you've heard in the past, which I think is a good thing. But like you said, his short game. I mean, he made I think it was like a 70-foot putt today for birdie.
Right.
He made a very nice putt on 17 on Sunday last week to put himself in position to be one shot off the lead. And he had that eagle putt to force a playoff, which is a long putt. I mean, it's like you said, and the biggest thing is it's fun watching him again, right? So I mean, there's nothing better than Tiger in contention on a Sunday, and in any tournament really, but especially the majors which we've got coming up. I mean, in this past Sunday we had it on in the weight room, and a bunch of players were standing around the TV watching it, and I mean, nothing gets it going like Tiger on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, he moves the needle, and he brings in advertising dollars for the network. He brings in excitement for the average fan. I think Nathan, I mean, I don't know if you and Nathan, our producer, were talking about this, but Nathan told me a story about they talked to a bartender at a local bar, okay, where I don't know if it was a hotel or a local, pub or whatever. And he said last Sunday, all right, when Tiger was in contention at the Valspar, he made double the amount of tips that he makes on an average Sunday during the golf season, all right? But that just shows you right there. I mean, they used to get on Ronald Reagan for trickle down economics. Well, that's trickle down Tiger right there. I mean,
Yeah.
not only is he bringing money to the networks, he's bringing money to the average guy tending a bar
Right.
because more people are in there drinking for a longer period of time. I mean, it's amazing what this guy does.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to throw out there that I think most people don't pick up on is one of the things that I think has led to this resurgence is, for the first time in his career, he doesn't have a swing coach. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's no Chris Cuomo or, whoever you want to talk about. He's playing by feel. I mean, I'm a golfer. I'm nowhere near or will ever be near what Tiger Woods is. But when I get on the golf course and I start thinking about swing playing, getting my hands here, I can't hit the ball. But when you just go out there and play golf, okay, you hit it so much better. And that's what Tiger is doing now. He's just playing by feel. He's not worried about, he's forgotten more about golf than any swing coach has ever learned.
Yeah.
So I think that's helped him as well. Not worrying about a swing as much as just going out there and playing golf.
Yeah, and I think I saw a stat. I guess it was on the broadcast this past weekend where one of the shots he hit, I forget if it was off the tee box or not, but it was the highest club head speed recorded on tour this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Which shows you that, yeah, I mean, his swing is in a good place. He's generating the type of power he needs from the body, and even at what age, 41, 42 now? I forget exactly.
He's 42.
42, yeah. I mean, he's still, physically just in a great place, and he's got many years ahead of him, to get these last 4 or 5 majors that he's looking for. So, yeah, it's exciting, and I agree with your point about the swing coach as well. I mean, when you get to that level, I mean, you know what you're doing. You just have to be in the right mindset to go do it, and I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes out. If he wins this week, definitely. But even if he finishes out strong, that he could very well be the odds-on favorite to win the Masters. I don't know. He's already pretty up there in some of these odds that are coming out.
Yeah, exactly. And wouldn't that be interesting? A guy, I mean, he is Tiger Woods, don't get me wrong, but a guy that's played 4 tournaments in the last 4 years or whatever is now got the Masters.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's and he can do it. There's no question he can do it if he can ball in the fairway. I mean, that's going to be very important at Augusta, is keeping the ball in the fairway as much as possible. And if he can do that, then I think he knows Augusta better than anybody. All right, so he can certainly win there if he can put it in the fairway.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've got the first major of the year coming up next month in April. I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on March Madness, just quickly, because it is happening.
Yeah, it is.
We're recording this on the Thursday of the opening slate of games, which, I guess if you're a college basketball fan or you're even interested in the tournament, that's probably one of the most exciting days, because it's the first day and you've got games on pretty much all day.
Right.
There seems like there's 4 at a time, pretty much from noon till midnight. So, personally, we've talked about it, I'm not a huge college basketball fan. Really at all. I prefer the NBA game if I'm going to watch basketball and follow basketball. But I guess, like, we had it on today in our white room, and whenever it's on, you do kind of find yourself taking a peek at it and looking at all the scores up top. And I mean, it's an event. I didn't fill out a bracket this year, but what's your take on March Madness?
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit it on the head. I mean, regardless of whether you're a basketball fan or not, I mean, I think, from the time college basketball starts in November to now, I might watch 1 minute of college basketball.
Right.
And that's no slight against the game or anything college basketball.
Sure.
But I watched more basketball today than I watched all year, all right?
Yeah.
Because it's an event. Like you said, I mean, there's a bracket. You're saying, all right, who's going to get there? And all that. So it's a little bit of an event. And then you always have the buzzer beaters and these upsets and so forth. But my take on it is, for the little that I know about college basketball, is that I think the tournament is more wide open this year than it's been in many, many other years. I mean, you look at your number 1 seed. You got Virginia in the South. You got Xavier in the West. You got Kansas in the Midwest. Excuse me, and Villanova in the East.
Right.
Virginia is far and away the best team in the country. If you look at their overall record, they were I think 16-1 in the ACC. They were 30-2 overall. So, over and above everybody else right now is Virginia, but they're still not what I would consider, a no lose type team.
Right.
And you look at their draw. I mean, Kentucky beat Davidson today. If Kentucky gets by Arizona,
Yeah.
Virginia may have to play Kentucky, or they may have to play Arizona, especially Arizona. That's not an easy game to play in the Sweet 16.
Right.
I mean, that's going to be tough. And Xavier, I mean, who knows about them? Kansas, Kansas has been up and down this year. Probably one of the more challenged Kansas basketball teams in the last 15 or 20 years, even though they are a number one seed. And Villanova, a team that won the tournament 2 years ago, you just don't know what you're going to get with Villanova either. I mean, so I think it's pretty wide open, and I think the winner, is probably going to be somebody that we didn't expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything I've seen about it, that's pretty much the consensus. Because those top seeds you just named don't include, traditional powers like Kentucky, which you mentioned, Duke, even Tennessee got a 3 seed this year, which maybe they're not a powerhouse, but that's a high seed that can make it pretty far in the tournament, I think. So yeah, I mean, it should be interesting. And like I said, I didn't fill out a bracket, so I don't have a Final Four prediction for you. But
well, I will say this about Tennessee for all our loyal listeners in the state.
right.
I think Tennessee, and I followed a little bit of Tennessee because I play golf with some guys, some of our seniors, the seniors that I play with, that have been talking about Tennessee. Don't sleep on Tennessee. I mean, they were 25-7 this year. They tied for the SEC championship, the regular season SEC championship. They co-shared that. They lost the championship game of the tournament to Kentucky. All right. They pounded Wright State today in the first round, which they should do. And now they're going to play the 11th seed Loyola of Chicago, which upset Miami of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to beat Loyola. So they're going to get to the Sweet 16. And you know something? Tennessee may not have, the superstars that some of these other teams have, but they've got the SEC Player of the Year. They've got a solid team that plays great defense with great effort. I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee, believe it or not, would not make it to the Elite Eight. I believe they have a shot to get to the Elite Eight. And if they get there, they're going to have to face probably either Virginia, Arizona, or Kentucky, which will be a tough order for them. I'm not sure they can get past any of those teams. Kentucky, they can. They beat them twice this year.
Yeah.
But who knows? And I think Tennessee, has done a lot for their fans this year, and they're going to have a great run. I mean, they're a good, solid basketball team. But outside of that, you look at the teams. Duke's got an easy draw. They're going to play Rhode Island now. I think they can beat them. They're going to probably get to the Elite Eight against Kansas. I think those two teams will make the Elite Eight. I think Villanova will make it, just judging by the draw that they've got. I don't think they've got anybody to challenge them before they get to the Elite Eight. Florida is the 2 seed on the bottom part of that East bracket. I don't think they're going to have a tough time. I'm sorry, Purdue is the 2 seed. I think they'll probably get to the Elite Eight against Villanova. And then in the West, I mean, it's pretty much wide open. I mean, Xavier is probably one of the more challenged number 1 seeds this year. So who knows what's going to happen to them. And then you look at the bottom part of that bracket, you got North Carolina. So I think it's very possible that you could see some upsets, and I think you could see some teams get there that maybe you weren't expecting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's at the end of the day, it's a lot to do with the draw and who you play and when you play them, and and with any type of event that's single elimination, you said it, anything can happen, and that's what I think that's what makes it so exciting. But we'll see what happens there. I mean, did we cover everything? Anything else you want to hit on?
Well, I do want to ask you one question. I mean, it wasn't one thing we planned on talking about, but I know you went to see the Phoenix Suns play the Cavaliers a couple nights ago.
Right.
And I don't know, was that your first time seeing LeBron James in person?
No, we saw him together in Washington.
That's right.
When he played for the Heat. But
that's right. But I want your impressions of LeBron James fresh in your mind as opposed to years ago. Your impression of LeBron James having seen him in person.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we talked a little bit about off air, but coming away in person, as much as, and I'm not a huge LeBron fan. I think he's kind of soft, and I'm just really not a LeBron guy. But I have to admit, I mean, he's really, really good in person. I mean, just the first thing that stands out, we know he's big, but he just looks big on the court. He moves quick. He's all over the place, and I felt like he kind of, granted the Suns aren't very good, but he kind of controlled the game basically, and pretty much did whatever he wanted out there. And his shot seemed to be falling a little bit more that night. Yeah, I mean, he looked really good. I was just really impressed seeing him in person, and yeah, I mean, it seemed like, especially now, because we saw him with the Heat.
Right.
He had Wade and Bosch, and I think that team was a little more on cruise control, and they were just beating up teams. But it seemed like this time around, I mean, the Cavs were nothing without him. So I mean, he basically had to control the game and do his thing. Because I think that if he wasn't on the court, I mean, it would have been a pretty even matchup. I mean, he was easily the best player on the court, and again, like I said, the Suns didn't really have anything for him. So
Yeah.
it just, so if you look at it objectively, I was really impressed. What can I say? I mean, the guy's a good player, but and as you alluded to, sent to me back in text, you still know Michael Jordan, you still know Kobe Bryant. Even
Right.
I think those guys have a different level of just mentality and kind of that old school toughness that LeBron doesn't have. But nevertheless, I did go to the game and got a good impression from his play on the court.
Well, if you work for that sports network that has the four capital letters,
Yeah.
I won't mention who they are. It would be blasphemy to say that LeBron is soft, but he is. I mean, I think the thing that sets Kobe and Jordan, they're different players. I mean, LeBron, let's face it, LeBron is a power forward. I mean, that's
Yeah,
basically what
yeah,
he is.
yeah.
Okay? I mean, yeah, he's played the point. Yeah, he's played the post, but the guy is a power forward. Okay. Kobe and Jordan were two guys. I mean,
Right,
they were all right. But Kobe and Jordan were assassins. I mean, they wanted the ball. They wanted to take that final shot. They were assassins. They wanted to beat you, cut your heart out, stomp on it, and
yeah,
then beat you again.
yeah,
LeBron doesn't strike me that way. LeBron strikes me as way more athletic, maybe, than those two guys were, as
yeah.
far as the range of skills that he has. But we've seen over the years he passes off the final shot.
Right,
I mean, and don't tell me he's trying to get his players involved, because Jordan and Kobe got their players involved as well. But when it was crunch time, they wanted the ball in their hands.
right.
And that's where I don't see LeBron. That's what I don't see out of him that I saw out of those two guys.
Yeah, another thing, last thing I'll touch on real quick too is another thing you can see in person is the pregame warm-ups. Whereas I never saw Jordan in person, I never saw him warm up, but I've seen Kobe in person numerous times. And just during the shoot around in the warm-ups, LeBron was, he was throwing up balls and dunking them and making the crowd ooh and ah and running around and just basically just like trying to put on a show of athleticism, which is fine. But I'd always seen Kobe more work on his footwork, work on different shots from different parts of the floor.
Right.
He just seemed to take it a little more seriously in terms of honing his craft than LeBron did, which again speaks to the whole kind of mentality of why I don't think he's on levels of those guys and even some other guys in the league. But all that being said, yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to get your opinion on
No,
that.
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
But I think we talked about a lot of good stuff tonight, and I think we've got a lot of things coming up. I mean, we're hitting that honey hole of sports coming up here. We got the Masters coming up in a few weeks. We've got Major League Baseball starting in a couple weeks. I'm sure Uncle Joe is concerned about Gio's next start, whatever that may be. Washington. We got baseball. We got the Masters. We got off-season NFL plus the draft. I mean, good times coming up in the world of sports, and there'll be lots for us to talk about.
absolutely. Not only that, and we'll be sure to have a few more guests on as well.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So we enjoyed bringing this episode and look forward to the next episode of the Press Box Podcast. See you soon.